So today, the topic of the conversation is something that has recently captured my imagination, and that's on the whole concept of artificial intelligence and morality. Now, the topic of morality and cyber has always been of interest to me. In fact, I've had a podcast series called The Moral Compass that we've been co-hosting with the ITSP magazine. I had about six guests talking about really interesting topics, all the way from Roomba collecting information in your home to autonomous cars making decisions based on algorithmic bias, etc., etc. But this whole AI and morality caught my attention because recently at a interesting conference in Santa Clara called Global Big Data and AI Conference, I happened to have the opportunity to talk about this topic. And so I did some research, and so the presentation that I put together was well received, but I wanted to take just a snippet of what I presented over there in the hopes of reaching a wider audience and raising awareness about this important issue. But before we do that, let's walk back in time. So we immigrated from India about 20 years ago, and a vegetable market is a big mainstay of any Indian's life. And as I was growing up over there, had the opportunity to go to the vegetable market with my mom. Now, looking back, I can say with amazement that the vegetable seller's brain, most of them were illiterate, was the most amazing piece of machine learning, AI, cognitive, data science, call it whatever you want, all rolled into one. Why so? Because let's assume that my mom was always looking for a bargain, which means she goes over there and typically, if he says it's 10 rupees a kg for potatoes, she'd ask for 5. Let's say my neighbor, on the other hand, who is a harried professor, the last thing he wants to do is spend any more time at the vegetable market than needed. So he'd go over there and just ask for uh, a kg of potatoes and pay whatever the vegetable seller would quote him. And then let's say there's somebody new in the neighborhood, and the vegetable seller identifies that person immediately, saying he's not seen her at all. So therefore, he offers her a bargain basement price so that he knows she's going to come back as a repeat customer. So already there's personalized pricing depending on who you are. But the most interesting thing, in retrospect, is the buyers also knew this was happening. My mom knew that he was going to jack up prices, so therefore she'd ask for a discount. The professor knew that he'd be in and out, so he's not going to waste any time, and he knows he's going to get the appropriate, reasonable price. And the person new to the neighborhood also knows the game of how she's going to be offered a promotional pricing, which is only going to change later on. So the scales were more or less even. Let's fast forward to 2012. Now, in the New York Times Feb edition 2012, it ran a really interesting story about PPS, Pregnancy Prediction Score. And there's an individual by name Andrew Pohl who is the mainstay of this story. So really what the gist of the whole thing was, Target research had come to prove that usually grocery habits do not change. If you go to Safeway or Target or any other store, typically you continue doing that, unless it goes bankrupt, of course. But there are certain points in one's life where these habits change. And a woman's second trimester of a pregnancy is one such point in time. So it come to this conclusion through various means. Now, also through baby registry, they were able to uniquely identify their customers. So what the New York Times reported was they put two and two together and said, okay, if we were to identify women shoppers who have gone through the baby registry and go back in time and look at their purchases through their 3 trimesters, we can come to some conclusions. And that's what they did. They had an army of researchers, according to the article, that went back and sifted through the records and identified, for instance, that women in the first trimester would buy unscented body lotions. So they came up with this theory of what a pregnant woman would typically buy in the first, second, and third trimesters. And the article says that if in the second trimester you start addressing the woman with things like coupons and promotions. So they come to the store with the intent of buying baby items, but then get exposed to the other things Target has to offer. You've actually locked that customer for life. Now, the expose that happened apparently was a father storms into the store, one of the Target stores, and confronts the store manager saying, "Why the hell are you sending baby coupons addressed to my teenage daughter?" The store manager had no idea about Andrew Pohl or what was going on. So he essentially apologized, and the father left. And the good store manager that he called back 3 days later to extend his sincerest apologies again, except the sheepish father told him that there was some going-ons in his house that he was not aware of, one of them being his daughter was actually pregnant. So let's pause there for a bit. This was 6 years ago, right? Pre-big data, pre-AI, where by researching buying patterns, Target was able to identify which of their customers were pregnant before their customers knew it. We're in 2018 now. This conference was full of all kinds of innovation, from manufacturing to healthcare to medicine, etc. And there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this, absolutely. But the question about morality and ethics is something every organization is going to be faced with. And understanding that at some point in time, vendors and service providers will have more data, will have more knowledge, will have more cognition about their customers before the customers ever do. And what do you do with that? How do you react is an important thing that we have to grapple with today. And as consumers, we cannot pretend that this is not going to happen. This is already happening. In my presentation, I gave examples of 8 different organizations, large and small, that are grappling with this today. Some have already gone past it in terms of how they're adapting. Others have no clue what to do. But they all have this problem of amassing data, running analytics, and being able to not just look at where things are today, but be able to predict where things are going to be. That's an important line that we have to recognize and take action on today. Thank you for listening. I'm going to be talking about this at more places in 2018. If this topic resonates with you, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to engage in dialogue. The more we're aware, the more we can be cognizant of what's around us and be prepared for where we are. Thank you. Bye-bye.